All right, welcome to your weekly update of January, July,
A little bit
July
warmer than
19th.
that.
Hope you're doing better than I am. How are you today, Nikki?
I'm doing great. All right. So, from an interest rate standpoint, we've seen a lot of volatility in the market over the last week. Obviously, the tensions overseas in Iran and all the things that are happening there are making those interest rates just up and down as the bond market responds to oil prices and different numbers coming out from a CPI perspective that help things a little bit. And now we have the ICE data from a housing perspective, which is saying that there's more buyers in the market now. So, things have just been going up and down. We are in the mid to upper six range right now from a purchase standpoint. So we can get into the lower six range depending on the program and depending on what the qualifications are and how much you want to spend on a buy down. But for right now, as of today, we're in that more mid to upper six range. I have a feeling we're going to be there for a while. It did get me thinking though. I am actually at my family's cabin right now for a week, and it did get me thinking about talking about second homes and kind of some of the things that we see from a lending perspective that as an agent you might want to watch out for as you're kind of talking about deals, making deals, and making sure that when your client goes to buy that second home that they understand everything that they're getting into. So from a lending perspective, some of the alerts that we like to, or some of the alerts that come up that are when we deal with second homes is going to be where it is located in relation to their primary residence. So the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, in fact, all the lenders, FHA, VA, are very intuitive as far as are we calling this a second home or are we calling this an investment property? Most lenders, so most investors, Fannie, Freddie, VA, and FHA, all state that in order to be considered a second home, it has to be at least 100 miles from your primary residence. Okay. Or a reasonable amount of time, whereas we can reasonably think it's a second home. Why I say that is, especially in Minnesota, you may have a primary residence in Minneapolis, but then you could have a second home that's less than 100 miles away if it's a lake property, for example, because that's a reasonable expectation that a property on a lake is a second home. So there are some rules that come that are part of the second mortgage or second home requirements. I'm sorry. So keep that in mind as you have clients that are looking for second homes. If we're over 100 miles, no big deal. Otherwise, we have to have a reasonable thought process that goes along with it. The other thing is, when we come, well, a lot of second homes, especially in Minnesota, have different kinds of heat sources, different kinds of water sources, and different types of septic or sewer systems. So those are three things that can really trip us up depending on the type of lending that we're doing. So an example of this would be well water. If the property has well water, there is a well water test that is required on VA loans. The buyer should complete a well water test no matter what, but we don't necessarily need to see that from a lending perspective. So that's important to know. Septic systems are a huge require a septic inspection, no matter if you're doing a conventional FHA or VA loan. One of the more important things is inspection and the appraiser notice it and on their end, they're going to, and they call that out, we're going to have an additional inspection be done on the septic. So just some things to keep in mind as we talk about second home lending. Minimum requirement on a second home is 10% down, which is why there is this very clear distinction of what's between an investment property and a second home. A lot of people say, oh, it's a second home, even though they're going to be doing a VRBO or they're going to be doing, other things to that property. They want the lower down payment of the 10% down, but it's really actually going to be an investment property. So just some things to keep in mind as you're looking at second homes, cabins, things of that nature. Last one I forgot, heat source. So you have to be able to have a heat source that is a reasonable expectation that it will heat the entire home throughout, the winter months. So some of those examples that I've seen are going to be like a wood burning stove could be an acceptable heat source, or, obviously baseboard heating, furnaces, things of that nature that we normally see. But you can use a wood burning stove as a primary heat source to count as compliant for lending purposes. So just some things to keep in mind. If you do have any questions, it's better to ask us and have us do the research than it is for you to guess and make a deal, and then they can't get lending for the home.
Yep. And Nikki, can you go back and just say your septic? You froze a couple times.
Oh yeah, so the
Housekeeping.
septic, we always require a septic inspection
Mhm.
while for any sort of lending. The caveat to this is if the septic inspection comes back and the you guys have some arrangement of where the septic work is going to be done after closing, let's just say. With that being said, the appraiser goes out to the property and let's say they see issue with the septic just on observation, there may be some additional requirements and some additional inspections that need to take place and even some fixes that could need to take place before closing. So just an FYI for you.
Perfect. Well, good. Well, I know you were on vacation, so as usually, thank you so much for
Yeah,
jumping on this call.
absolutely.
If anyone has any questions, wants clarity or more information, or just to be in touch with a rock star lender like you, how do they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Mortgages from MN to AZ. You can also call me, text me at 952-484-1584, or you can email me at nikki@kevnickgroup.com.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah,
again, appreciate your time. Everyone go
absolutely.
sell something until next week and enjoy your vacation. We'll see you next
Yeah,
week.
we'll see you next week.
Bye.